It's on. Okay, let's do the.
बारिश आता है तो पानी आता है, जब ज्यादा बारिश आता है तो ज्यादा पानी आता है।
लेकिन जब बारिश चली जाती है तो पानी क्यों नहीं जाता? सोच आपको समझाएगा। कराची का निकासी आपका निजाम।
Hi everyone, Assalamu alaikum, and welcome to the live, the Facebook live and YouTube live session with Soch videos and our esteemed guests, Dr. Asiya Sadiq and Dr. Rafey A Siddiqui, and panelist and research analyst at Soch videos, Sadia Amin, who is an urban planner. My name is Karachi. I'll be conducting and moderating the session. I will try my best not to speak for too long because I would like the experts to answer some questions regarding Karachi's drainage and sewage problems. As you all may have seen, or I'm hoping most of you have seen our documentary on the Karachi drainage system, where we outline the problems regarding the sewage lines, and also the urban planning that has been taking place in the city for the past 50 years, which has resulted in the state of what we have today. So I'm going to introduce our panelists right now. I will hand over the mic to Ms. Asiya Sadiq, and then Dr. Rafey will also introduce himself, and then Sadia will introduce. So, Dr. Asiya, please go ahead.
Assalamualaikum, Salia and Sadia. Thank you very much for inviting me to this panel discussion, and I must congratulate you on the documentary. It was, first of all, lots of fun doing the interview with Sadia. Because उसी ज़माने में बारिश और flooding सब कुछ हो रही थी कराची में, तो I charged up, and it was really great that she came in and we spoke about it. But the best thing about your documentary is कि इस topic पे जो भी चीजें बनती हैं वो इतनी dense और difficult होती हैं कि वो अमूमन लोगों को समझ नहीं आती या boring हो जाती हैं, people don't want to hear it. But आपकी documentary I think is really easy to understand and for a layman to kind of get to the heart and the core of the issue. मेरा introduction ये है जी कि I'm an architect, urbanist, academic. NED University में associate professor हूँ. At the moment I'm based in Belgium, where I'm currently in my last year of PhD. तो आपने मुझे already कह दिया, मगर अभी चंद महीने बाकी. You could call me a doctorandus at the moment. पिछले 20 साल से कराची में पढ़ा रही हूँ, रिसर्च कर रही हूँ और एक प्रैक्टिस भी चलाते रहे हम लोग. So that's my introduction.
Okay, great. Thank you, Dr. Asiya. Dr. Rafey, over to you.
Thank you, Sonia and Sadia, and lovely to see Dr. Asiya as well. I would just like to extend what Dr. Asiya was saying regarding what a brilliant video that you guys were, a documentary that you guys were able to put together. Or right now I'm in a very remote area of Pakistan, but I did not want to miss this because this topic is like really close to my heart. So my name is Dr. Rafey. I have a PhD in water law and water policy and water management, basically, or I'm a civil engineer by profession. I am also an Envision sustainability professional. I'm in fact the only one in Pakistan to hold this certification. It's about sustainable infrastructure, and as you can probably see, this is what we are suffering with: sustainable infrastructure.
Great. Thank you, Dr. Rafey, for joining us from this remote location. We won't ask you what the location is because I understand people in drainage and sewage have a lot of top secret work to do. But now I'm going to hand over the mic to Sadia. So Sadia, if you could introduce yourself and your affiliation with Soch. Sadia, you have to unmute yourself.
Hello, everyone. I'm Sadia Amin. I'm a social scientist by training and an urban theorist, you may say. And I'm currently working with Sadia at Soch Videos. And my job is basically associated with researching and producing content on urban planning issues in Karachi. So I look at everything from water to land. And other issues. And my interest is in looking at basically structural issues in Karachi. So going deep down on why we are in a state we are. So yeah.
Okay, great. Thank you, guys. We have a comment saying, where's Arif Hassam Sahab? We tried to focus mostly on the people included in our documentaries. So I hope that this will give you a fresher perspective on the conversation about drainage in Karachi right now. So I'm just going to start off the talk for the next 5 minutes. We're just going to cover the documentary itself and the concept behind it. So Sadia, you and I will discuss this basically. When we started working on the documentary, it was in July. It was
July,
even
August, yeah.
before the sewage. It was even before the urban flooding,
Yeah,
right?
yeah.
So if you could tell me that process, like how did you feel when you started this report? Because essentially, when I approached you and we discussed the idea with our CEO, it was something completely different, right? So can you
Yeah.
tell us about the evolution of the documentary? Like, why did you choose to reach out to Dr. Rafey and Dr. Asiya in this regard? And, how did you get to where you are now?
So we started working on this in July when monsoons were starting in Karachi. So हल्की हल्की बारिशें थी और उसी वक्त ये था कि ट्रैफिक रुक जाए, आप ऑफिस से घर नहीं आ सकते, घर से ऑफिस नहीं जा सकते. And then in August and September, while we were actually full hands-on working on this documentary, बहुत ज़्यादा बारिश हुई है कराची में. And I remember when I had to like schedule an interview with Dr. Asiya, I could not because we had no internet access, no signals, nothing. So off the radar for I think 7-8 days. So at first when I started working on it, so I'm used to like researching, reading academic articles and stuff like that. But there was so little to be said on sewage and drainage in Karachi कि सिर्फ समझना या किसी को समझाना कि ये दोनों अलग-अलग चीजें हैं used to be a task itself. कि कराची का मसला क्या है, सुएज और ड्रेनेज के इतने इश्यूज क्यों हैं, या बार-बार हम न्यूज़ में उस वक्त आ रहा था कि नालों की सफाई लॉकडाउन में हो जानी चाहिए थी या नहीं हुई है, अब हो रही है जो भी. And I feel that it's such an important issue and it's linked to literally how the city functions and how it runs, and then everything else that connects within the city. So even housing and informality and land and water and everything, including public health too. So when it was quite a journey. It took us 3 months to produce what we have produced. And even while we were looking at the maps, बहुत मुश्किल हुई थी because again इतने updated maps हमारे पास होते नहीं हैं. Data बहुत ज़्यादा available नहीं होता है. So you have to like be really careful in what you're doing and that the information that you're giving is actually accurate, up to date, बहुत पुरानी नहीं हो, बहुत नई नहीं हो. And then when I was reading about sewage and drainage and then architecture, urban design, materials that are used, and especially what could be done now, I found out about Dr. Asiya and Dr. Rafey, and then I reached out to them to basically discuss more on के चलो प्रॉब्लम क्या है ये तो हमें पता है, लेकिन अब उसका हम क्या कर सकते हैं. एंड यूजुअली व्हेन वी थिंक अबाउट कराची, हमारी एक बड़ी नेचुरल सी इंस्टिंक्ट होती है कि हम कराची को कंपेयर कर लें दुबई से या लंदन से या न्यूयॉर्क से या व्हाटएवर, सम फैंसी सिटी लाइक दैट. बट वी डोंट लुक एट कि हम लोकलाइज तरीके से किस तरह इन प्रॉब्लम्स को सॉल्व कर सकते हैं, एंड सॉल्यूशंस अवेलेबल हैं. ऐसा नहीं है कि किसी ने पहले कभी कोशिश नहीं की है या पहले कभी सॉल्व नहीं हुआ है. सो आई रियली वांटेड टू लुक एट that aspect also, okay, basically what the problem is, what the structure is like, and how do you, if not fix it, make it better, which is why we took on this documentary, I think, and here we are now.
Well, here we are indeed. That was a very generic response to segue back into the conversation. So the reason I'm having so much fun with Sadia right now is also because this is a very long process for the both of us.
Yeah.
The post-production team also had a lot of fun, actually, well, not fun, but a lot of khwari working on this. As you can see, our documentary, there was a lot of documentaries which came out before this, which had a lot of architects and urban planners actually speaking about the problems in Karachi and, you know, the typical drone footages and actual footage of the areas. But we decided to take it one step further, and that's why we produced this 3 months later. And hence, we have the product that we have today. We've received a lot of comments about how the video starts off really funny and then gets super serious. And I think a lot of people thought, Sadia, that we'd be super funny throughout the video, but sometimes, you know, it's a very serious topic. So we had to get our.
I think that's our coping mechanism as Karachiites, that we use humor to segue into serious topics.
Exactly. It's, you know, after the urban flooding, there were petitions lodged in the High Court of Sindh, and they are still actually looking to be heard. There's no verdict yet. DHA and CBC have given what they call lollipop, what the audience call, what the crowd calls the lollipop. I'm going to say this again, but they've given them reasons to basically settle down, but not really seeing any impact yet to the drainage and sewage system. So now we're going to get into the conversation of basically how the documentary shows unplanned urbanization and the issue of waste and outdated sewage and improper solid waste management and the solid waste system. So we came to this conclusion after examining the natural and man-made drainage systems of the city and how unplanned urbanization affects the different kinds of nalas in the city. Now, when we talk about unplanned urbanization, the mainstream trope is that informality is the cause of unplanned sewage. As we explained in the video, it is also formed with legal construction that is often unplanned and does not take topography of the city into consideration. So, Sadia, I'm going to ask you one question, then we're going to move forward with Dr. Asiya. So, Sadia, this unplanned and planned city, this whole situation that, this conversation that keeps happening in Karachi, why is that so? I know you are an urban planner and you yourself would like to be more of a hands-on urban planner in the city. What stopped you from actually joining the ranks and making this place better, Karachi better?
So I usually look at things from the perspective of land and formality and informality, and I feel that in Karachi or anywhere else in the global south, there's this huge kind of dichotomy जो बना दी गई है कि formal है तो अच्छा है, informal है तो वो बुरा है. और बहुत ही सादा से अल्फाज में जो इसका इफेक्ट जो होता है ना, वो ये करता है कि जो गरीब आदमी है उसको वो क्रिमिनलाइज कर देता है कि गुर्बत एक बहुत ही बुरी चीज है और गुर्बत एक काइंड ऑफ गुनाह है, समझ लें आप. सो व्हेन वी पुट the blame of not having a sewage system in Karachi to the informal settlements के चलो नालों के बराबर उधर बन गई है, नालों के बराबर में अगर कोई कच्ची आबादी है और हम पूरा का पूरा कराची की जिम्मेदारी उन पर डाल देते हैं, तो I feel कि we are making a mistake.
Okay, I think we lost Sadia for a bit. Yeah, her internet's gone. Okay, so Dr. Asiya, we will come to you now with the first question. Can you explain your experience in this regard to actually working in Karachi? And you are based in Bangkok right now. Am I correct?
No. I'm not in Bangkok. I'm in Brussels.
You are in Brussels right now.
I'm in Brussels, but all my practice has been in Karachi, you know, teaching, working, even my first undergrad degree at the Dalit College. So, yeah, I'm basically Karachi born, bred.
Gee. So if you could just tell us about your experience and how you, from your studies to where you are right now, and how important planned urbanization is for a city like Karachi.
देखिए, planned urbanization तो usually is the basis of any city planning. Karachi के case में what has happened is a lot of what we call this kind of waves of immigration, starting right from 1947 to date. Just may, you know, I wouldn't go into the details of all of that, but that has been one major contributor towards this kind, what we call unplanned urbanization or kind of the unplanned growth of the city. उसके अलावा कुछ triggers वो रहे हैं जैसे कि 1960s की industrialization, which was introduced in Karachi, the making of the two satellite towns, Korangi Landi and Site Town, जिसके नतीजे में बहुत से peripheral laborers colonies या low income areas develop हुए, and this kind of transit which happened through the city has led to the emergence of a big transit hub in Sadar Bazaar. ये वो तमाम phenomenons हैं which were what you could call unplanned, directly from the urban planning perspective, but they were definitely embedded within some kind of a larger economic planning policy, जैसे कि industrialize करना शहर को in the 60s. उससे पहले शहर का capital जो यहाँ से move हुआ from Karachi to Islamabad, that also led to some changes. Then 1971 की fall of Dhaka के बाद immigrants का आना, Afghan war, and that's infill. So Karachi has been a host, I would say, to a lot of local, national, and kind of regional happenings which have happened, and that has led to what we call unplanned urbanization or unplanned growth of the city. मगर ऐसा नहीं है कि शहर के master plans नहीं रहे. The city has over the, एक बड़ा एक misconception है कि जी कराची में कोई planning नहीं है, कराची का कोई master plan नहीं है. In fact, that's not true. Karachi has over the years, starting as early as the 50s, had several master plans and a development authority in different scales and forms. जिसको अब हम CDG कहते हैं, वो किसी वक्त KDA कहलाता था, KDA KMC. So we've had different local governance systems as well. एक current master plan, अभी भी आपका master plan 2020 exist करता है. मसला है उसकी execution and implementation का, और एक बहुत बुनियादी मसला जो हमेशा हर master plan में नजर आया है is a lack of research on the reality of the city. So आप एक छोटा सा sample लेके किसी भी किस्म का demographic या socio-economic आप project कर देते हैं to the next 20-30 years and you make a master plan, but that obviously fails. There have been instances के master plan बनता है projecting, let's say, a population of 10 million, मगर उस वक्त मौजूदा आबादी शहर की already 20 million होती है. अब अगर आप एक incorrect data और एक incorrect research के ऊपर कोई भी master plan बनाएंगे, वो आप theoretically तो उस चीज को बना लेंगे और theoretically आप उसको approve भी करवा लेंगे, but उसकी implementation is next to impossible because उसका reality के साथ कोई रिश्ता ही नहीं होता. और जब उन policies या उन projects या plans को आप implement करने के लिए शहर में जाते हैं, तो वहाँ की तो आदाद शुमार realities and जो सादिया कह रही थी कि एक बहुत बड़ी चीज जो हमेशा से missing रहती है is the incorporation of the informal sector. So वो जो आदाद शुमार हम लेते हैं या जिन सेक्टर्स या प्रोसेसेस को हम शामिल करते हैं प्लानिंग के अंदर, कराची के किसी भी मास्टर प्लान की या किसी भी प्रोजेक्ट की प्लानिंग में, वो सिर्फ फॉर्मल प्रोसेसेस या सिर्फ फॉर्मल चीज़ों को एड्रेस कर रहा होता है. और जो आपका 55-60% शहर इनफॉर्मली ऑपरेट कर रहा है या इनफॉर्मल आबादियों में रहता है, उसका उसमें कोई नामो निशान ही नहीं होता. तो कॉन्सिक्वेंटली दोज प्लान्स टेंड टू फेल. ये है, it's not only unplanned urbanization, it's also the kind of tools which are being used to respond to that.
Thank you for that, Dr. Asiya. So what you're basically saying is that the tools to actually move forward with planning this city also are not available, right? There's no one in the actual government who can actually help out in this regard or guide us. I'm going to segue now to Dr. Rafey. Sadia is actually going to be joining us shortly. She's just having some connection issues. But let's go to Dr. Rafey. Just having some tech difficulties, but here. So moreover, where does the responsibility of drainage and sewage lie? with the citizens or with the local or provincial governments. So, Dr. Asiya, if you could respond to this, and then Dr. Rafey.
जी बिल्कुल the ultimate responsibility of providing the larger networks बिल्कुल वो हुकूमत के साथ लाई करती है जिम्मेदारी क्योंकि एक टर्शरी लेवल का जो बड़ा सिस्टम होता है वो तो किसी भी सिटीजन या किसी भी ग्रुप ऑफ सिटीजन की टेक्निकल फाइनेंशियल रिस्पॉन्सिबिलिटीज या कैपेसिटीज से बहुत बड़ा होता है मगर जो तो दैट्स वेरी क्लियर कि जो बड़ा लार्जर नेटवर्क है वो तो हुकूमत को ही प्रोवाइड करना है मगर जो रियलिटी है शहर की वो ये है कि जिनको हम कच्ची आबादियां कहते हैं जो कि एक बहुत आउटडेटेड टर्म है वी स्टार्टेड कॉलिंग देम लो इनकम और लो मिडिल इनकम सेटलमेंट्स उसके अंदर लोग अपना सीवेज सिस्टम खुद बिछाते हैं और उसके बाद उसको सेकेंडरी ड्रेन्स के साथ वो इनफॉर्मली जोड़ देते हैं ये बात पहले जब सादिया ने डॉक्यूमेंट्री के सिलसिले में भी इंटरव्यू किया था तो हमने यही कंक्लूड किया था that the primary level infrastructure is very much in place. मसला पैदा होता है उसको जब आप जोड़ने की कोशिश करते हैं शहर के लेवल पे या एरिया के लेवल पे जो सेकेंडरी ड्रेन्स होते हैं एंड इवेंचुअली जो बड़े नाले हैं which is what I'm referring to as the tertiary infrastructure. तो बुनियादी तौर पे अल्टीमेट रिस्पॉन्सिबिलिटी ऑफ कोर्स हुकूमत के साथ ही रहेगी हमेशा इतने बड़े नेटवर्क को बिछाना चलाना मेंटेन करना मगर मौजूदा हालत और रियलिटी जो है इट्स एक्चुअली द टू सेक्टर्स टुगेदर लोगों की भी उसके अंदर एंड स्पेशली लो इनकम आबादियों की इक्वल पार्टिसिपेशन मौजूद है इन लेइंग ऑफ देयर रिस्पेक्टिव सीवेज सिस्टम्स और उसको बाद मसला वही पैदा होता है कि बड़े सिस्टम्स की जब आप मेंटेनेंस नहीं करते नालों की सफाइयां नहीं होती सीवेज का चैनल्स के अंदर गार्बेज डंप होता है या इलीगल कंस्ट्रक्शंस हो जाती हैं both formal and informal that leads to what we see as urban floodings in Karachi. So the responsibility is shared at the moment, but of course technical and financial resources are limited from the community's perspective. तो हुकूमत को उसको equally equal level के ऊपर support करने की जरूरत है for the total system to work in a good way.
Thank you for that, Dr. Asiya. I have some comments also, but I'll share them after Dr. Rafey has said his piece. So, Dr. Rafey, welcome back to the show. And if you could unmute your mic and please just answer if it's a shared responsibility or not, because you have experience actually working on different areas in Karachi, right? And every area has its own administration and different roadblocks to actually follow through or bureaucracy or whatever. So how about you start off with your experience?
Okay. So number one, I think Asiya just hit the nail in the head with her comments. बात यही है that is the truth. The ultimate responsibility does lie with the government and the government agencies, or in this case, the Sindh Solid Waste Management Board or the Karachi Water and Sewage Board, and for the stormwater drainage, the city government or the KMC or the KDA or the CDGK, as it has been changing over the years. But there's an inherent problem. दो तीन problems हैं. Problem number one is the urban sprawl. But the inability, as Asiya already did mention this before as well, the problem is not with the non-existence of the master plan. The problem is with the implementation of the master plan. Number one, when you digress from your master plan, you have urban sprawl. जब urban sprawl होता है, you have a problem with number one, counting your chicken before they hatch. So even if the government is actually responsible for it, they don't have the exact numbers in terms of resources to mitigate the situation. Then the other thing is, whether it be a government agency or a private sector agency, if you are in non-revenue making authority, it is difficult for you to survive. I think the reason why Karachi Water and Sewage Board fails to operate the way it should be operating is because of the the negative revenue it is making. Same is the case with since Solid Waste Management Board. And then, without being political, we all know what is the problem with the city district government, Karachi, or the KMC, or the KDA. On top of all that, there's definitely a lack of civic sense and civic responsibility. Uh, yes, I think there's lack of government machinery to mitigate certain things which can be handled. But on the other hand, I think the citizens are not playing a good part as well when it comes to creating trouble with solid waste and informal connection of sewage into the stormwater drains. Um, so I think yes, it's a shared responsibility. The ultimate responsibility does lie with the government, and in the current setup, I don't see how these utilities, the three utilities that I've been talking about: Karachi Water and Sewage Board, the Sindh Solid Waste Management Board, and the City District Government Karachi. I don't see the because they are not making revenues. I don't think they can survive, and the only way to handle this in the future is capacity development of these three organizations.
Thank you for that, Dr. Rafey. Sadia, we were just discussing if it's a shared or unshared responsibility between citizen and government. Do you have any comments on this?
I would. So my own personal perspective has always been that while of course there is the responsibility that lies within the citizens, that you have to be careful and civil and everything, but largely the structural issue lies within governance and how everything has been distributed and fragmented actually. So कचरा उठाने की जिम्मेदारी किसी और की है, पानी की जिम्मेदारी किसी और की है, आपकी गली की साफ सफाई की जिम्मेदारी किसी और की है. So while it is a good thing in a lot of ways, but in Karachi especially, it adds to the problems for citizens because again visible structures काफ़ी मुश्किल होते हैं एक तो समझना कि अगर मेरे घर में पानी नहीं आ रहा या मेरे घर के बाहर पानी जमा हुआ भी है तो मैं कंप्लेन किसके पास करना चाहूँगी. आई वुडंट नो दैट अनलेस आई एम वेरी वेल इन्फॉर्म्ड कि यूसी काउंसिल में कौन है और या तो KWSB में कौन है या आई हैव अदर कनेक्शंस और अगेन इफ़ आई लिव विद इन अ गेटेड कम्युनिटी जिसका खुद का एक इदारा हो कंप्लेंट्स लेने के लिए. So when we were doing this research and we spoke to people, a lot of them didn't know. जब बारिशें हो भी रही थी तो भी a lot of people didn't know where to even go. Defense में protest हो गए because again defense we know who controls it, किसकी जिम्मेदारी है. But largely within the city दूसरे इलाकों में अगर आप रह रहे हैं तो अक्सर पता भी नहीं होता है कि हम कहाँ शिकायत करें या where do we go. So I think yes, the responsibility lies within you also, but largely एक structural problem भी है कराची में कि हम किसकी जिम्मेदारी है क्या करना. And then again there's a lot of inequality that we always have and we always have had. So yeah, that's that.
Thank you for that, ladies and gentlemen who's not in the call right now. But, when we were actually going out to shoot the documentary, Dr. Asiya, we visited a lot of these low-income middle settlements, which were once called Kachi Abadis around 10 years ago. And the development that we've seen, road ke upar, cement ke layers, tar ke layers, dal ke Kachi Abadi has become a cemented abadi, right? And the people who have been living there for 20 years now say this was never a low-income settlement. Ye to hamara ghar hai. Generations have grown up. People have come there and asked for their votes. They are now registered entities. Magar if you just drive a little further out of these low-income settlements, right on the nala, you can see the nala and the barrier wall of the house touching, and the pipe is leaking straight into the nala. So we did this. We went to Soldier Nala. We saw the nalas there. We went to My Kolachi, and even though the areas were cordoned off, where it's written KWSB, property do not trash, people were still throwing their trash. So in effect, yes, there is, administration issues, but right there where the sign is saying do not throw your trash, aap isse aage nahi jaye, aap idhar nahi aaye, people are still breaking the wall and going ahead, entering areas and going ahead. And yes, we understand there are a lot of variants to this cause. But hopefully with more transparency and more conversations like this, where there's authorities are willing to take responsibility and step up to their mistakes, and also the citizens shouldn't just blame everything on the machinery, right?
Yes.
That's my perspective, at least.
Yeah, but what I would like to add to that, जैसे अब ये urban sprawl की बात कर रहे थे डॉक्टर राफे, या आप review of the कच्ची आबाद, what we used to call कच्ची आबादीज and which are now consolidated low middle income settlements, मेरा ये ख्याल है कि दोनों ही sectors, both formal and informal, contribute to any happening in the city. मसलन अर्बन स्प्रॉल एक तरफ तो लो इनकम सेटलमेंट्स की स्प्रॉल की वजह से हुआ है, मगर दूसरी तरफ from the Bahria to the DHS to the whatever other gated communities we have in the city, वो भी सारे एग्रीकल्चर लैंड को सब डिवाइड करके मिडिल इनकम अपर इनकम हाउसिंग बनाई गई है. So similarly for the nalas, if you have low income settlements which are discharging into them directly, you also have formal abadis and formal structures which are discharging into the same. So ये जो एक general condition of lack of empathy है, मेरा ख्याल है वो तो civilian society में across आपको मिलता है. But we know of instances and we know of documented cases like the Orangi Pilot Project in Karachi or many other community initiatives कि जहाँ पे low income settlements ने या low income communities ने फिर भी contribute किया है towards the development of their areas and towards the development of the city at large. A lot of times what happens is कि जब नए projects आते हैं, चाहे वो मेगा प्रोजेक्ट्स रोड मेकिंग के हों या सीवेज के हों या किसी भी किस्म के हों, a lot of this work which has already been done by the people, a lot of times with the aid of NGOs, technically supported, उसको disregard कर दिया जाता है. That's often not counted towards development of the city. और उस पे फिर duplication होती है काम की, या एक बिल्कुल एक कोई टॉप डाउन नया सिस्टम उसके ऊपर सुपर इम्पोज कर दिया जाता है. सो वी हैव टू अंडरस्टैंड वन थिंग कि जब तक बोथ हुकूमती इदारे, इंस्टीट्यूशंस लाइक एकेडमिक इंस्टीट्यूशंस और अदर इंस्टीट्यूशंस, जब तक हम जो ज़मीनी हक़ाइक़ होते हैं ना, जिसको हम ग्राउंड रियलिटीज़ कहते हैं, जब तक हम उनको सही से रिसर्च नहीं करेंगे, सही से समझेंगे नहीं in terms of capacities of different groups of citizens and communities in the city, we will never be able to come up with a realistic plan जो कि implementable हो और जिसको लोग अपने resources या किसी किस्म की third party involvement के साथ maintain भी कर सकें. आप कई projects शहर में देख लीजिए, they are they're being implemented. Eventually या तो वो gentrify हो जाते हैं because they are so expensive that they need to charge money for parks, for example, for people to enter and use them. So इस किस्म की unrealistic developments जब तक होती रहेंगी, उसमें आप majority of the शहर के जो citizens हैं या low income जो communities which is majority of the city, उनको आप कभी भी link in नहीं कर पाएंगे. So this formal informal interface needs to be recognized, it needs to be documented and studied, and it needs to be made a part and parcel of the planning and plans and projects of the city. Varna aap we'll keep hanging between the top down planning and the bottom up initiatives. उनकी आपस में कभी भी लिंक अप नहीं हो पाएगा और कोई ना कोई मसले मसाइल आपको मुस्तकिल नजर आते रहेंगे.
Beautifully wrapped up. I think you answered a lot of the questions that we had coming in right now. We have a question for Dr. Rafey, which was asking for the execution of a master plan. What kind of accountability and transparency would we be looking at if there was a master plan, right?
Then we had a master plan. It's called the Master Plan 2020. correct, नया बन जाना चाहिए था अब तक. So there is a master plan. वो Rafe, I don't know if he's available to answer this.
Sadia, unmute yourself. Yeah.
Sorry, Dr. Rafey just messaged he cannot connect because of the internet.
Oh.
To all our viewers, Dr. Rafey was actually joining us from a secret location as he's working on a new project, as most drainage developers and water engineers do. So we can't reveal the location. I've gotten a lot of comments saying "Gadi wali tujhe salam." So salute to you, Dr. Rafi. We have another question which kind of wraps up. You answered it also very well, Dr. Asiya. Can any one entity be held responsible? Is violation by multiple people adding to this problem? Lack of penalty by governments and a drive to break laws and maximize profits by the developers, and absolute disregard by citizens for local building laws and circumnavigating guidelines for their benefits. Now, this also we mentioned in the documentary when the question of covered and uncovered nalas came up. And Dr. Asiya, you said कि जहाँ ज़मीन मिलती है, it's like gold in Karachi. So if you want to elucidate that further, maybe explain how this process actually works. कि ज़मीन मिल गई तो उसके बाद क्या होता है?
जमीन मिल गई तो बस फिर वही होता है जो हम सब करते हैं कराची में, हम स्पेक्यूलेट करते हैं उसके ऊपर और इंतजार करते हैं कि महंगी हो जाए तो फिर बेच दें, फिर 2 खरीद लें, फिर 2 को बेच दें, 4 खरीद लें. Land is a big issue in Karachi. We have a publication on it which is available online as well. It's called Karachi, the Land Issue. This is in the absence of other viable and more secure investment possibilities. उसमें ज़मीन बहुत ज़्यादा कदर कीमत फिर उसकी बढ़ जाती है, लोग उसमें इन्वेस्ट करना चाहते हैं. It's a tangible asset. So land का जो एक issue है, that's definitely very much kind of like the umbrella issue which ties in with a lot of other issues in Karachi. उसमें वही वाली बात जो सादिया कह रही थी कि there are multiple stakeholders and multiple owners of the land in Karachi. तो अगर आप for example कोई sewage plan भी अगर global sewage plan शहर के लिए बनाना चाहें तो उसमें ये भी एक बहुत बड़ा एस्पेक्ट आता है बिकॉज बीच में कोई लैंड कंटोनमेंट का आ जाएगा, कोई केपीटी का आ जाएगा, some of it will belong to one authority or the other. मेरा ख्याल है 27 तो लैंड ओनिंग एजेंसीज हैं कराची शहर में. So when you have this kind of a governance fragmentation, so that is a big contributor to a global master plan as well. लैंड के हवाले से बहुत से recommendations देते रहे हैं various planners and researchers in the city, और उनमें से एक ये है कि आप land multiple ownership के ऊपर बड़ी fee लगाइए so that people do not speculate on land, and there can be a more equitable distribution of land. Talking from the point of view जो आपका topic है which is sewage and drainage, you've seen it through your own documentary making कि जहाँ पे भी नाला कवर हो जाता है वो नाला या तो पार्किंग की शक्ल इख्तियार कर लेता है या उस पे दुकानें बन जाती हैं या इवन शॉपिंग प्लाजा टाइप चीजें बन जाती हैं. सो हमारी रिकमेंडेशन थ्रू अ लॉट ऑफ रिसर्च दैट वी डिड ऑन द ओपन ड्रेन्स इन द सिटी वाज कि आप यूज दीज एज व्हाट आर कॉल्ड ग्रीन लंग्स फॉर द सिटी, कि ये वो एक किस्म का अवेलेबल इकोलॉजिकल एसेट है जिसको रिटेन करना, मेंटेन करना बहुत जरूरी है, बिकॉज द मोमेंट वील कवर दीज अप दे विल गेट कन्वर्टेड इनटू सम लैंड यूज और द अदर. और इस वक्त डिस्पाइट बीइंग द फैक्ट दैट दे कैरी सीवेज थ्रू देम, these nalas provide the much needed relief spaces in the city. Of course, they should not be present the way they are at the moment, with raw sewage passing through them or garbage dumps, garbage being dumped into it. There are lots of design possibilities. Aap in nalon ke andar using recycled sewage water, you can grow different kinds of plants, which by themselves, through these biological, ecological processes, they clean up the water. Eventually, वो पानी discharge हो सकता है समंदर के अंदर. इसमें बहुत सा फ्लोरा फौना पैदा हो जाएगा through a natural process of ecological cycles, And these can contribute to a great extent towards the pollution, the environmental air and उस किस्म के जो environmental issues हैं शहर के अंदर. So indeed, I think ये जो perennial drains हैं हमारे, जो नाले हैं बड़े वाले, उनको तो हमें open ही रखना चाहिए. उसमें sewage को आप separate करें, box culverts के अंदर डालें, treat it and let it go into the ocean. And these sections of the nalas should definitely be developed as ecological corridors. They should be developed as, like green lungs for the city. Mera nahi khayal ke we will gain much by covering them. We're just going to lose that available open space, which contributes towards the overall environmental quality of the city.
Yeah.
Thank you for that. Sadia, go ahead.
Yeah, I will just add one thing, that when you talk about sewage and having drains that go to the ocean, the key point is that we need treatment plants here right now, because हमारा सारा गंदा पानी इस वक्त समंदर में जाता है.
हाँ, बिल्कुल. हर किस्म का, from residential to hospitals to industrial. मुझे याद है मैं सादिया से जब इन्होंने इंटरव्यू किया था for the documentary, so I was laughing and I said to Sadia कि अगर यही हम we let the raw sewage go into the sea और फिर वही झींगे मछली की शक्ल में हमारी प्लेट वापस आ जाता है. And we had a good laugh about it. But mercury levels in sea life जो हम और आप खाते हैं कराची में, they're dangerously high. Simply because के हर किस्म का sewage from grey water to black water just gets discharged directly into the ocean. हम सब देखते हैं, when you go to the seaside, you see these, sewage nalas just opening directly onto the beach. So treatment is definitely very important, and treatment plants भी सादिया के साथ ये भी पहले डिस्कस हुआ था कि कोई बहुत हाई टेक होना जरूरी नहीं है. They are natural processes. जो आप plant by introducing a certain plantation or certain bacteria or certain organisms into that space, आप उसको नाला कह लें या आप उसको किसी तालाब की शक्ल में कहीं उस पानी को जमा करके, you can do those treatments before you let it out into the sea. एक ना सिर्फ local, but this is also a kind of regional and international responsibility that every country and every city has towards the larger environmental क्या मैं कहूँ situation जो कि हम सब share करते हैं at the end of the day in terms of climate change and rising temperatures and so on. So नहीं है यकीनन बहुत important aspect of any kind of sewage and drainage that gets proposed for the city. It just can't go directly into the sea.
Yeah, exactly. So like it's सारा हम अपना पानी समंदर में डाल के.
हाँ, और आप देखें ना हमारे यहाँ तो environmental violations किस किस्म की होती हैं, like माइकोलाची, जब माइकोलाची बनाया जा रहा था तो that was basically cutting right through the mangrove. और इसी पे फिर हम वो बात करते हैं कि आप low income settlements या कच्ची आबादियां जिनको कहा जाता था, जो कि were also and are still present around the Maikolachi precinct, और उनको बहुत ज़्यादा blame किया जाता था कि जी they contribute towards the cutting of the mangroves and they contribute towards dumping garbage into the mangroves, etc. And then came Maikolachi bypass. Maikolachi bypass ने जितनी तबाही की उस पूरे mangrove की, मेरा ख्याल है all कच्ची आबादीज और low income settlements put together would not have been able to do it. जब वो सड़क बनी उसके बाद वो जो मैनग्रोव का फ्लो था, जो पानी अंदर बाहर आता जाता था, that got cut, which means all mangroves in that area died. All झींगा, or other जो छोटे जानवर वहां पे were part of the ecological system disappeared. Eventually that became kind of दलदली किस्म की जमीन जिसको उन्होंने मजीद उसके अंदर मट्टी और चीजें not industry but construction waste वगैरह डाल के that land got consolidated, subdivided and sold. So these are the city has seen major environmental disasters like this, and we are also seeing the impacts of those. From urban flooding to rising temperatures to disappearing flora and fauna. So we have to really act on these things.
Yes, most definitely, Dr. Asiya. When we actually were recording the different areas and the locations, यही तो हमें नजर आया था कि, there was all these nalas had formal and informal, buildings on them. But then there was a question as we move forward in our documentary, the question of the sewage and the treatment plants, which Sadia has also mentioned. And even in our documentary, we have 3 treatment plants in Karachi. One is being proposed to be built right now, TP1, TP2, TP3, and TP4. But TP1 and TP2 don't even function as a normal treatment plant. We had a question also regarding uh, plastic waste being dumped in the nalas and all of that. So how do treatment plants work? So if could you just explain how treatment plants work, either one of you? I think Dr. Asiya, you can start and explain how exactly on a natural drain that water seeps into a treatment plant. Uske kya tarike hain to actually let it out into the ocean?
Ji, maybe Sadia has done more research into the technicalities of it. मैं बस आपको conceptually यही बता सकती हूँ कि whatever sewage gets discharged at the house level, उसको आप जब गली के level पे जमा करते हैं, in fact, even when it gets discharged at the house level, it should normally be treated at that point. There's a very simple system of making a gutter and making sure that the solid waste is left out and the water kind of continues. जो ग्रे वाटर हमारे घरों में पैदा होता है उसको हम बहुत आसानी से we can recycle and use it back into our toilets and in the gardens and so on. जो black water है उसको आप discharge पे you let it go into the bigger system. But then once the secondary system meets, for example, different streets meet at different, cross sections in the city, वहाँ पे treatment plants possibilities बहुत किस्म की हो सकती हैं, from mechanical to again some kind of natural, technical solutions. And from then on, of course, जहाँ पे शहर का सारा sewage इकट्ठा होता है वहाँ पे you get also industrial waste, you also get from hospitals etc. So वहाँ पे फिर आप उसको you need some kind of proper technical treatment. जो शायद सादिया ने ज़्यादा research की हो, मैंने बहुत ज़्यादा इस topic को कभी research नहीं किया, राफे होते तो शायद और details बता सकते थे. But what I'm essentially trying to say is that it does not happen all together just before being dumped into the sea. It can happen systematically at different scales, from the street to the area to the city. उसको आप कई levels पे तोड़ सकते हैं उस system को और simplify करके low cost, low tech solutions उसके available हैं, वो आप apply कर सकते हैं. And I think आपकी documentary में आप कहीं वो दिखाते भी हैं, if I'm not mistaken. And these are not rocket science. ये शहरों में बहुत आसानी से available होती हैं ये चीजें, not necessarily very expensive such systems or very difficult systems. So I think if the political will and the administrative will would be there, we can definitely have a system for Karachi, which can not only add to the eventual clean water being dumped into the sea, but जो पानी आप उसमें से recover और recuperate करेंगे, millions of liters of water that we use every day in our kitchens, in our toilets, in our office buildings and so on, can easily be recycled and turned into, for example, some kind of a larger landscape system for the city. मतलब जो दरख्त आपने लगाए हुए हैं सड़कों के किनारे या जो parks हैं, और अक्सर जगहों पे use हो भी रहा है, अक्सर आप देखती होंगी जो nurseries plants वगैरह बेचते हैं, they do some kind of a small system for themselves. वो नाले में actually pipe डाल के और उसको recover करके किसी किस्म का उसका treatment करके वो पानी इस्तेमाल कर रहे होते हैं उन पौधों को पालने के लिए. Of course, it's not the best solution, but I'm just saying that this is an example to say that there is a possibility, and वो सारा पानी dump करना भी नहीं चाहिए because it's valuable. Water is valuable. We just can't, keep flushing it down our WCs. We have to, from the house to the bigger system, every architect, every urbanist, every urban planner, engineer, ठेकेदार, developer, जो भी हैं, अगर वो थोड़ी सी investment कर लें, तो they can be easy systems for at least separating the gray water from the black water, separating the inorganic waste from the organic waste. और ये जो plastic dumping की आप बात कर रही थी, that's, we all know, the biggest contributor towards this choking of the nalas, but eventually also a threat to marine life. तो and उस पे भी कुछ छोटे मोटे इनिशिएटिव्स मेरी नज़र से गुजरे हैं शहर में, जहाँ पे प्लास्टिक की थैलियों को रिक्यूपरेट करके, साफ करके, and it being turned into some kind of craft. कभी उसके कोई बैग्स मिल रहे होते हैं. I know there was a unit in Lahore at a certain point जो प्लास्टिक रिसाइकलिंग करके फर्नीचर बनाने की भी उन्होंने कोशिश की थी. I don't think any of these things ever got scaled up. और उसका रीजन यही होता है अमूमन that this kind of initiatives require once again some kind of investment. They require some kind of support from the local governments to provincial or national governments, ताकि वो उसकी R&D कर सकें, फिर उसकी मार्केटिंग कर सकें और उसको लोगों तक पहुंचा सकें in terms of awareness, collection and so on. So लुब्बे लुबाब ये है सारी बात का कि ये चीज़ें डूएबल हैं. इसके लिए जो हमें चाहिए वो हमें प्रॉपर रिसर्च चाहिए, इसके लिए हमें रियलिस्टिक किस्म के प्लान्स और प्रोजेक्ट्स चाहिए और पॉलिटिकल विल चाहिए. I think communities in Karachi are very used to self-help. पानी के इंतजाम से लेके, सिक्योरिटी के इंतजाम से लेके, सीवेज, सॉलिड वेस्ट, ज्यादातर कम्युनिटीज अपने लेवल पे ही ऑर्गेनाइज कर रही होती हैं. So I think that part of the development stakeholders is very fertile. It's very ready. What we need is a good governance system, and when I say a good governance system, a system which is sympathetic to the reality, a system which is sympathetic to the capacities, to it, its own capacities and also the capacities of the communities. आप जापानी प्लान ले आए, आप दुबई का प्लान ले आए, आप फलाने प्लान ले आए, वो सब नहीं चलता है, बिकॉज उसके लिए जिस किस्म की टेक्निकल, सोशल, कल्चरल कैपेसिटीज आपको चाहिए होती हैं, वो हमारे यहाँ नहीं होती. मैं बहुत छोटा एग्जांपल दूं आपको. होता है जी अवेयरनेस रेजिंग के लिए पैम्फलेट्स बना के बांट दें. अब अगर किसी को पढ़ना ही नहीं आता तो वो आपके पैम्फलेट का क्या उसको फायदा हासिल होगा. आपने थ्योरेटिकली अपनी खानापुरी कर ली, आपने वो पैम्फलेट्स बना लिए, बांट दिए, बट what is the utility of it? Maybe, and there are alternative systems like आप community participation meetings करें, आप लोगों को बुलाएं, verbally समझाएं, और ये सब कराची में low income settlements में होता रहा है और हो रहा है. So I think we could actually learn a lot from what we have within the city. बस वही है कि उसकी awareness, उसकी documentation, और above everything, respect for that, and the incorporation of this informal happening into the formal structures. अब वो interface क्या बनेगा, ये जो connected bureaucrats हैं या technocrats हैं, they need to sit together and they need to work this out. But ऐसी कोई बात नहीं है कि ये हो नहीं सकता. Like I said before to Sadia, I'm convinced and I'm very, very sure that if we kind of have the right intentions and the right will, हर किस्म का मसला आप हल कर सकते हैं. स्केल उसका बढ़ता जा रहा है obviously, मगर nonetheless one can develop small pilot projects and then try to scale them up. So that's my kind of very long view on that. Sadia, mute.
Okay. Yes. So sorry about that. So Sadia, if you have anything to say, because as Dr. Asiya said, you must have more hands-on experience with the research and the tech of this. But I think Dr. Asiya really answered it beautifully. If you have any points to add before we move
I
to
have
the next
nothing to
question from
add
the
to that. I
audience.
mean, she covered everything really well.
Okay, great. So we have a question from Irfan Ismail, and he's asking, is it possible to build an organic fertilizer or recycle plastic industry from the waste of Karachi? I feel like we'd have to look into how much trash is actually being created in and generated in Karachi or dumped, and then move forward from there. The topic that we are discussing is the future of what Karachi's drainage system. So I don't know if this will particularly be relevant to your areas of interest.
Definitely. I mean, it's not only about sewage in the sense that all of these utilities eventually are interconnected. For example, recycled plastic के बारे में मेरी इतनी कोई research नहीं है, तो शायद ना जवाब दे सकूं. But again, conceptually, organic fertilizer, yes, of course. I mean, जैसे अगर आप पानी recycle करके use कर सकते हो from your gardens all the way to the big parks and gardens for the city. Similarly, अगर organic waste हम properly जमा कर सकें और उसको कहीं organize करके we can turn it into fertilizer like we do for our own gardens. बहुत से लोग अपने gardens के अंदर कराची में they take their kitchen waste etc and they develop खाद और फिर उसको use करते हैं अपने gardens के अंदर. And there's also technical knowledge available for doing so in the city. So I think definitely किया जा सकता है. इसमें मसला सिर्फ पैदा होता है जो थोड़ा बहुत हमने इस पे काम किया था on solid waste disposal. Inorganic waste. There's some disturbance. Is Rafi trying to get in there? I don't know.
I don't think Rafi will be joining us. This is, I think, some mic issue is happening. Not too sure what the sound is.
Yeah, there's somebody saying something. I can't really hear it.
That helped. Yes.
Yeah.
It's 6 o'clock.
Okay. So there's a question also of how much plastic is being generated in this city. I think that was mentioned, Dr. Asiya, by you. Like you said, we'd have to actually know how much plastic is in the city. And we have another question.
Yes, there's an urban resource center in Karachi, एक इदारा है, एक NGO है, and they have an ongoing research on the solid waste of the city. ये जिस किसी ने भी सवाल किया है, if they are interested, they can go and visit the website of the URC. It's called URC Karachi. उस पे आपको ये statistics मिल सकते हैं और उसके maybe they also have some additional information. Organic and inorganic की जो मैं बात कर रही थी before the disturbance, just to kind of wrap that up. The main issue is that inorganic waste is very interesting for the people who pick it up because they can sell it. इसलिए inorganic waste meaning plastic, हड्डी, शीशा, गल, कपड़ा, कागज, ये सब तो आपके घर से भी आके रद्दी वाला ले जाता है और जो garbage dumps होते हैं उस पे से garbage pickers pick it out, sell it to their ठेकेदार जो होते हैं and then they sell it further to the relevant industry. Organic waste का मसला ये रहा है सालिया कि एक तो there's no system in place for collecting it. So वो बस सड़कों पे ही पड़ा रहता है और वहाँ पे सड़ता रहता है because there's no organized industry like the inorganic waste industry who would like to buy it off or do something with it. But definitely there's a lot of potential. I think अगर कोई entrepreneur या local government किसी level पे इसको pick करना चाहे इस issue को issue, and you need space and you need some people who are willing to take it up as I would say a business venture and turn it into manure, bio kind of manure, which can then be sold further to houses or nurseries or local governments to use in their parks. Why not? I think the बिल्कुल potential है, मगर उसका मौजूदा existing कोई system चूंकि नहीं है, and because it's a very fragile thing, organic waste क्योंकि बहुत तेजी से rot करता है, बहुत तेजी से उसमें degradation होती है, तो उसके लिए whoever gets involved, they have to be prepared to pick it up, to take it to the right place and recycle. Inorganic waste का ये होता है कि भाई कागज रद्दी, plastic, bones, this and that, they don't rot. So, you can take your time over picking it out and sorting it and then selling it further. So organic waste ka ye constraint hai कि nobody is willing to deal with it. It's much more messy. It's much more unhygienic. So तक हमारे पास शहर में इसका कोई अच्छा example आया नहीं. But there are lots of horticulturalists and landscape architects and so on who I think if contacted by local governments would be willing to work on this.
Thank you for that, Dr. Asiya. I think it's just the two of us now. Technical difficulties have resulted in just you and I speaking about this.
This is what this world is coming to. Whoever will have a good Wi-Fi will survive.
Touch wood, mashallah, praise the Lord. आप Brussels में बैठे हुए अभी, but over here Karachi the load shedding is going on again.
मैं बिल्कुल समझ सकती हूँ. Given the constraints, आप लोग फिर भी बहुत कुछ करते हो. We used to, I mean, I've operated like that all my life as well. कि बस वो, backup systems and things like that. That's how you.
I guess that's why there's not much data in Karachi, because there's no means to collect it. There's also no infrastructure. But I just wanted to say we'll be wrapping the session in the next 10 minutes. The future of Karachi's drainage system is something I think we've touched upon, obviously, in this conversation. The audience has also understood that it's a shared responsibility. There's a lot of management and administrative issues which we can overcome, but there's the question of waste, right? There's organic and unorganic waste, which you mentioned. Now, organic waste, yes, of course, as you gave the examples, but inorganic waste, big corps also add a lot to it. And everyone understands that recycling, हमें बताया जाया था when we were kids, plastic goes here, paper goes here, you should sort out your trash before you dump it anywhere, wherever it goes. And in fact, we'll probably be doing another documentary on where does our trash go in Karachi, which would add as a second part to this video, probably the documentary that we did. One question that we have from Mariam Asad, where she says, what would an effective waste management system look like? Would it be a landfill or incineration? I think from there, I'll ask you that much because you've answered the rest of the question, her question earlier.
देखिए, आई एम नॉट एन एक्सपर्ट ऑन दिस, एंड पिटी के डॉक्टर राफे हैं नहीं, तो मैं बहुत very afraid to say anything because I do not have, like I have knowledge on issues. But incineration के बारे में जो मेरा पहला एक वो होगा reaction, what would be its environmental cost. But of course, incineration का भी depends what system, right? Because we know that there are systems which create smoke and are polluting, but there are also systems which are isolated और उसमें वो सब मसला नहीं होता. The other thing I would say, so environmental impacts, whether landfill or incineration, I think that definitely should be seen. The other thing is the investment that you need to make and what the local government can afford is the second question, which would probably guide the decision. And the third thing is कि जो आपकी local capacity है, local government से लेके जो आपके rat pickers या आपके solid waste pickers हैं, वो जो एक existing system है जो for the moment tied up है with your formal system, उसको क्या चीज correspond या respond करेगी? Because the local government does not have a capacity to go door to door to collect waste. तो उसमें तो आप रिलाय करेंगे उन्हीं सिस्टम्स के ऊपर जो ऑलरेडी इन प्लेस है. Later on, you know, as the ultimate or as the final recycling option, आप क्या, not even recycling, in this case getting rid of it option, क्या सबसे मुनासिब होगा, तो मेरे ख्याल से इन्हीं चीज़ों पे मुनस्सर होना चाहिए. अब टेक्निकली उसके और डिटेल्स क्या हैं वो मैं अनफॉर्चुनेटली नहीं आपको बता पाऊंगी, बट द एनवायरमेंटल, the financial and the social kind of sustainable जो aspects हैं, उनको जो भी चीज सबसे बेहतर correspond करेगी, मेरे ख्याल से वही बेहतर solution होगा शहर के लिए. So it's very difficult to say offhand कि क्या best है. You know, we can't do that. I'm a big advocate of understanding ground realities and tying in planning and projects with that. So same goes for this.
Gee, thank you, Dr. Asiya, for attempting to answer that, even though you're not a specialist, but that was a great answer. You know, you describe yourself as your motto is cities, citizens, and spaces. So you promote green and socially resilient projects while engaging with the ecology, history, and social cultural diversity of the interfaces, informal or formal. In the end of our documentary, we mentioned that Karachi is one of the worst countries. We will be severely affected by climate change in the next 10 to 20 years. And we've experienced climate change this year when we have such extreme and heavy rainfall. 100 mm of rain fell over the course of 3 days in Karachi. You know, property was destroyed, lives were lost. And in a megacity like ours, and they say, compare it to Dubai, compare it to Bangkok, compare it to here, there. How can we compare jab the cost of human life also is so cheap, right? So you have suggested a green lung, but how that's working out in India and Bangkok, right? So the existing nalas that we have right now, हम नहरे ख़याम तक गए थे, सोल्जर बाजार गए थे, सर सैयद नाला गए थे, साफ सुथरा रखा हुआ है अभी के लिए, फेसलिफ्ट करवाया इस गवर्नमेंट ने बिकॉज दे हैड टू बी क्लीन, मगर 2-3 महीने में हम फिर से देखेंगे कि लैंडफिल्स बन जाएंगे. You know, now we've understood that yes, people shouldn't be dumping, not dumping, but eventually there's no other resource given for people to throw their trash or connect their pipes for water or sewage. So in your eyes, Dr. Rafey is not here also to give us the engineering aspect of all this, the future, but in your eyes, what can be done right now? What is the immediate steps that we as Karachiites or the government must take to address this climate change issue and the incoming, which will result in more rain, and then the same result that we saw this year? So what can we do to alleviate this issue? How can we avoid it this year or in the next 10 years?
देखिए, ऑफ हैंड एकदम से कहना हमेशा मुश्किल होता है, बट I would say in the short term, definitely keeping the maintenance in place. You know, that's definitely the thing to do. क्योंकि साल तो गुजरते हुए पता भी नहीं चलता ना, मतलब before you आप पलक झपकते हैं तो साल गुजर जाता है. So चाहे वो political gimmick की तरह हुआ या जो भी उसके reasons हैं, जो भी नाले साफ हो चुके हैं उनको definitely maintaining them regularly should be a top priority and systematically cleaning up the rest, because ये बहुत important चीज़ है समझना. और मेरा ख्याल है टेक्निकल लोग लोकल गवर्नमेंट में या अदरवाइज इस चीज़ को समझते हैं कि ये कोई आइसोलेटेड आर्टरीज नहीं होती है, इट्स एन इंटरकनेक्टेड सिस्टम शहर के लेवल पे. सो आप ये नहीं कर सकते कि आपने सर्टन चीजें या सर्टन ड्रेन साफ कर दी और बाकी को वैसे ही छोड़ दिया, वो बैक फ्लो होना शुरू हो जाता है. इवेंचुअली वॉट एवर यू डन ऑल्सो काइंड ऑफ फॉल्स अपार्ट. तो जो काम हो चुका है उसको डेफिनेटली मेंटेन करना, मेकिंग श्योर कि उसमें गार्बेज डंपिंग ना हो, मेकिंग श्योर यू नो के लोगों को आप जो इर्द गिर्द की आबादियां हैं उनको एंगेज करें, उनको अवेयर करें. अर्बन फ्लडिंग का मजा सबने चखा था. सो वो यू नो जो अमीर गरीब की तफरीक होती है कि जी गरीब इलाके फ्लड हो गए तो अमीरों को पता नहीं चला, या अमीरों के इलाके फ्लड हो गए तो गरीबों को पता. जब पूरा शहर फ्लड हुआ सब जगह पे नुकसान हुआ, तो मेरा ख्याल है वो एक सेंसिटाइजेशन तो ग्लोबली आ गई है. From the political perspective and from the local governance perspective, I would, as an architect, urbanist, I would think that this is a very good time to kind of build on that. एक मेमोरी होती है किसी भी शहर की या किसी भी कम्युनिटी की, आप उस मेमोरी पे काम कर सकते हो कि आपको याद ही होगा चंद महीनों पहले ये हुआ था. मेक श्योर कि अब आप प्लास्टिक की थैलियां ना फेंकें. And while you're doing the awareness raising, simultaneous to that, you have to institute some kind of a simple system of garbage collection at the street level or at the area level. क्योंकि ये तो एक रोज, it's a daily happening. कूड़ा हर रोज क्रिएट होता है, हाउस होल्ड लेवल पे भी लेके बाजारों में. सो आई थिंक ये छोटे जो इकदाम हैं जो स्केल डाउन करके करने वाले हैं, ये तो डेफिनेटली मुस्तकिल होने चाहिए एट अ रेगुलर लेवल. और उसके अलावा जो आप 10 साल वाली जो आप बात कर रहे हो, उसमें मेरा ख्याल है जो सबसे इम्पोर्टेंट चीज है वो ये कि टू हैव अ ओवरऑल एनवायरमेंटल प्लान फॉर द सिटी. मास्टर प्लान जब होता है ना, मास्टर प्लान में एनवायरमेंटल प्लानिंग इज वन कंपोनेंट. मगर दुनिया बदल चुकी है, दुनिया के हालात बदल चुके हैं, क्लाइमेट चेंज, ये तमाम चीजें, पैंडेमिक्स, दीज आर रियलिटीज नाउ. तो अब जो मास्टर प्लानिंग का भी सिस्टम है ना, वो भी ओल्ड फैशन मास्टर प्लानिंग सिस्टम नहीं हो सकता कि जी जमीन के पार्सल्स कैसे होंगे तो सड़कें कैसे बनेंगी. आई मीन दैट विल हैपन एनीवे, बट व्हाट आई एम ट्राइंग टू से इज दैट मे बी, and I'm thinking with you and I'm thinking aloud. आपने एक important question किया, मैं और भी सोचूंगी इसके बारे में यकीनन. मगर if we have to think 10 years and climate change is our main kind of perspective, जिसमें हम सोच रहे हैं, तो फिर मेरा ख्याल है पैराडाइम शिफ्ट की जरूरत है. जिस तरह से अर्बन प्लानिंग को हम देखते आए हैं, एक बहुत ही टॉप डाउन सिस्टम कि जी आप एक रीजनल प्लान करते हो, फिर लोकल प्लान करते हो, फिर एरिया प्लान करते हो, फिर सड़क प्लान करते हो. मेरा नहीं ख्याल अब उस तरह से सोचने का वक्त बचा है. मेरा ख्याल है if the environmental concerns are big and you're losing lives and you're losing property and investments and एक पूरा शहर स्टैंड स्टिल अगर हो जाता है, तो उसको maybe we need a paradigm shift and we need to think environmental plan. और उस बिगर लार्जर एनवायरमेंटल प्लान जिसमें यूटिलिटीज, इंफ्रास्ट्रक्चर, लैंडस्केप, ग्रीनिंग, सॉलिड वेस्ट मैनेजमेंट टू ऑर्गेनिक रिसाइकलिंग, ये तमाम चीजों का एक कॉम्प्रिहेंसिव प्लानिंग शुड देन बी मे बी द मेन थिंकिंग ऑफ द प्लान फॉर द सिटी. और फिर बाकी जो चीजें हैं वो उसके सबसर्विएंट हो. मगर ये एक यूटोपियन सी सोच है, ये एक यूटोपियन सी बात है इन द सेंस कि वो शहर जहाँ पे जमीन सोना हो और मेगा प्रोजेक्ट्स प्लानिंग को ड्राइव करते हों, वहाँ पे इन चीज़ों को सोचना शायद आसान है, करना बहुत मुश्किल. मगर नॉनदलेस जिन भी शहरों में तब्दीलियां आई हैं वो पैराडाइम शिफ्ट के बाद ही आई हैं एंड थिंकिंग आउट ऑफ द बॉक्स के बाद ही आई हैं. सो इफ वी रियली वांट चेंज इन द सिटी, एंड आई थिंक आपके जो डॉक्यूमेंट्रीज आप बनाते हैं, they can definitely be those vehicles of change, which make things clear and simple and accessible to the public. So I would say a paradigm shift for climate change.
Thank you so much, Dr. Asiya, for your closing statements. Actually, that was very well said. We all agree that there has to be a paradigm shift, not just from the old school way of thought. हम तो refer करेंगे older generation से, मगर हमारी नई generation जो है also to kind of understand the city, look at Karachi as a living being, right? Understand हम इधर तो घर नहीं बना सकेंगे क्योंकि we're under sea level, technically speaking. The geography, how will my house look if I build here? Have that enough intuition to see कि आप कहाँ property खरीद रहे हैं. Look up laws and legalities yourself, and before in fact blaming the formal or informal, ya kiska ghar hai, look within yourself also to find the answer. And that's what we endeavor to do at Soch. We take down very complicated subjects like the natural drainage that we just did covered with you, and break it down and make it simpler for our audiences to understand, and inshallah have more future discussions like this, where we can
Yes,
sit down with urban
definitely.
planning designers who will inshallah be a part of our management or master plan committee next, and we can ask them why they chose to do what they have to do,
Hmm.
for this city.
I mean, there's a new master plan due for the city anyway. मास्टर प्लान 2020 तो अब खत्म हो रहा है ना 2020 तो अब this is the time to think of a new way of approaching the city, what I call rethinking Karachi. And बहुत dynamic शहर है, बहुत dynamic लोग हैं, and like you said, एक older generation, एक current generation, and एक आने वाली generation, and we are a country and a city of young people. It's predominantly a young population. So I have a lot of hope, to tell you honestly. I mean, Masle Masail, if you look at the history of urban centers, cities have dealt with quite some drastic issues. And jahan pe, different problems hoti hain, uske saath hi saath उसके कुछ potentials भी मौजूद होते हैं, and through initiatives like yours and others, and they're multiple in the city. If we can bring those things together, I'm all about networks. I think networks have great strengths, and you could be one of those platforms जहाँ पे आप मेरा ख्याल है engage the youth, and next panel में कुछ ऐसे लोग होने चाहिए who should be open to new ways of looking at the city and taking it along.
Inshallah, yeah, we had over there. I'll just say like, share, and subscribe this video because Dr. Asiya has plugged it. Just for that, we always add that because we're a digital platform. But we had invited a couple of management people in the management administration to be a part of this talk, but we did not hear back from them. So it's unfortunate that the rest of our speakers aren't here because of technical difficulties. But it's also more unfortunate that they saw that this wasn't something important enough to discuss. But inshallah, I hope that next time when we meet, we will have more people on the panel, and we'll be discussing our latest video also in regards to that. Thank you, Dr. Asiya, for being on this panel, to Dr. Rafey also, who is not here right now, and Sadia Amin, our research analyst in Soch and producer of the documentary Karachi's Drainage System. On that note, I think we will end the session. Thank you to everyone who's been involved, and thank you, Dr. Asiya. Have a good day.
Thank you for having me. Thank you.
Allah Hafiz.
Allah Hafiz.
बारिश आता है तो पानी आता है, जब ज्यादा बारिश आता है तो ज्यादा पानी आता है।
लेकिन जब बारिश चली जाती है तो पानी क्यों नहीं जाता? सोच आपको समझाएगा। कराची का निकासी आपका निजाम।